Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with the happenings on the paper. One of the stories, which is actually on most of the papers, regarding the reshuffling of the Tinubu's cabinet, where we're seeing that certain ministries, about two, also have been scrapped, and then we're having certain names that have been submitted for the House to look into it. So they might be replacing some of the ministries, and then for some ministries that had nobody, especially the Ministry of Labor, which we'll be seeing that very soon we'll be having a minister there. So quite a number of names have been submitted. So fingers are crossed. Let us see what positions those names will be given, among which we have Nantawi from Plateau State. We have Bianca Ojukwu and many others, which names have been submitted. So all fingers are crossed regarding that. I am Sela Elisha. Please do well to drop your comment and your views regarding any of the story that's of interest to you. I will be doing this program alongside Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
All right, we have quite a number of papers, and we would love to start with a Punch newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, Dangote Refinery begins direct petrol sale to marketers. 12 states delay 30,000 naira minimum wage for teachers. This is a report. You can find details on page 42. Diaspora Nigerians get non-resident BVN platform December, and assurance from Cardoso. Still on Ondo Guva poll, we have Makinde rally support for Ajayi, says election will shock APC. Aiyedatiwa, whose voters declares PDP umbrella finally turn. The big story, private sector opposition split as Tinubu reshuffles cabinet. The writer says OPS backs Tinubu as opposition. CSOs Nigerians demand sacking of more underperforming ministers. President fires 5, appoints 7, reassigns 10 ministers as federal government merges, scraps ministries. And then we have a picture and the names of those who are in. We have Dr. Nentawe Yuwada, we have Muhammadu, and we have Bianca, which I remember she was on the pending list for the first, screening of ministers and didn't make it to the current ministers. And now we are seeing that Bianca Ojukwu is now in, and we have Dr. Jumoke, we have Idi Mukhtar Meha, we have Yusuf Atta, and we have Suweba Ahmad. And then those who are out, we have Uju Kennedy, we have Lola Adejon, we have Jamila Bio Ibrahim, we have Tahir Maman, and we have Abdullahi Gwarzo. Still on the paper, FEC OK $618 million loan for fighter jets and ammunitions. Canadian lady jailed 11 years for importing 35.20 kg of cannabis. On Oyan Dam, Ogun communities reject Abiodun's relocation advisory. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper, where we have IMF wants Nigeria to focus more on increasing tax revenue. You can read that detailed on page 20. Rep small increase in derivation fund from 13% to 50%. Concerning climate change, Lagos is sinking. Deputy Governor Hamza raised alarm. You can find detail of that on page 10. And we see the climate change is not just in Lagos, but I think even most part of the countries are experiencing the change in the climate. Obasanjo and Juma decry twilling quality of leadership in Nigeria. Detail found on page 8. The big story here, Tinubu fires 6 ministers, hires 7 new ones in cabinet. Rejig, where we have names Bianca Ojukwu, 6 new ministers, redeploy 10, appoint Shehu Dinko, Chairman National Sport Commission. Buhari's ex-minister take over labor, and then we have SGF, HOS working on merger of ministries. You can do well to read that on page 5. Diaspora Nigerians to get BVN coming from Cardoso. Federal government withdraws money laundering charge against Binance official Gambaya. You can find that on page 9. As well, we have mixed reaction as federal government scrapped Niger Delta Ministry. It was renamed, not scrapped. This is a reply coming from the federal government. We won't allow it, federal government using South-South money to develop other commissions coming from Clark. And then we have oil communities hailed Tinubu's decision. It's ill-informed Niger Delta activists This is you can find that on page 26. And on Edo, APC Transition Committee raising false alarm over documents coming from the government. It's false, says APC committee. Federal government give Julius Berger 7 days ultimatum over Abuja Kaduna Road project. And then on sports, Tinubu scraps sports ministry, appoint Dinko NSC the chairman. So we're saying that these are the two ministries which might be scrapped, which we're saying Niger Delta, even though the government said it was not scrapped, it has been renamed. And then we're saying that the Ministry of Sport have actually been scrapped, and you want to ask why. So you can find detail of that on page 30. Now we have a picture story where we can see pensioners protest in Abuja. Is very the picture here, the side is not very beautiful, where we see some of them even sitting on the floor. And this is some of the members of the contributory pension scheme sector of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners picketing office of the Accountant General of the Federation over non-payment of their arrears in Abuja yesterday. So you can do well to get the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, many citizens facing difficulties in Nigeria, Naira showing signs of stability, says IMF. League of Northern Democrats essential for Nigeria's future, statement from Obasanjo. The writer says corrupt politicians will fight you, Danjuma wants. FEC approves 443.3 million euros, $141 million credit facilities for fighter jets and ammunitions. The big story, 429 days after Tinubu rejigs 45-member cabinet, drops Uju Ken Ohaneye, Bio Tahir Adejon Gwerzo as ministers, nominates Bianca Ojukwu, Oduwole, Dengyadi Iwada, Meha Atta Ahmed as ministers. Sunday, there is special advisor to the president on public communication and orientation. Sunday Dare is special advisors to the president on public communication and orientation. Scraps Niger Delta and Sports Ministry. National Sports Commission returns. Tunji Olosa, now Minister of Education. John Eno, now Minister of State Trade and Investment. Tinubu creates Ministry of Regional Development. Ministry of Livestock Development gets Minister. Clark rejects scrapping of Niger Delta Ministry, handing over procession to be completed October 30th. You can find all the details on page 3. The last story on the paper, why Tinubu removed Kennedy, Ohaneye, Adejan, Usman, and Tahir. So if you want to know why these ministers were dropped, you can find details on page 3. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
And as much as I wanted to wait for us to go further into the papers before we look into why the president hopefully actually had to reshuffle the cabinet. But for me, Rachel, personally, I saw some of this coming. For some of these ministers, I'm not surprised, especially the Minister of Women Affairs. You could actually tell that for the past 1 year or 1 year plus that she have been the minister. Quite a number of people have been complaining about her ministry and some of the utterances that she says. And then you just cannot help but wonder, truly, what have you been doing for women, you know, regarding your ministry? And then we also look at the minister, the former Minister of Education, of course. He has come under a number of attacks concerning the things that he is doing. And then I believe that, I mean, the Ministry of Labor and Employment, there was nobody there. Initially, we had La Long before he went back to being the senator. And then right now, the office has been vacant. So we're seeing that somebody else have taken. But then for some of the people that are coming in, we just have to keep our hopes up, hoping that they will not disappoint us, and we hope that they should realize that there is work. But then I think I'm quite concerned if truly the federal government have scrapped the Ministry of Niger Delta. It's really, really not going to be right. We know that this is where we are getting the gold that we brag with. That's the oil. And so you can imagine, I think the reason why they were giving priority having the ministry is because we will clearly remember what happened when we had the militants, when they were threatening, and we know how many army men or armed men we've lost as a result of that. And then that was when the amnesty was brought up, and then having a ministry so that they will be be able to curtail what is happening there. We've seen a number of communities coming talking about the oil spill that they experience. They cannot practice any form of agriculture there, no livestock, no farming, nothing whatsoever. So you could actually tell that something needs to be done. But we believe that, I mean, speculations are coming that the reason why the president was out for that 2 weeks were part of the things he was looking into, making sure that he make the right decision. So let's congratulate these incoming ministers, and let us hope that they will actually live up to the standard, especially this minister for humanitarian affairs. I hope he knows what is coming for him, because already 2 have gone, we could clearly remember, because of fraud and all of that. So congratulate them ahead of time, and we hope that they will deliver eventually.
So like if we would have Ministry of Livestock Development, which was recently, and then we are now seeing is finally getting a minister, and then to see that of the Niger Delta is being scrapped, it's pathetic in a lot of ways, because we need to prioritize things in this country. The Niger Delta, you rightly said, this is what generates revenue. We are an oil producing country. We do our budget based on oil production. We're out there looking at how to increase oil production to add and be able to reach 2 million barrels per day. Just yesterday we saw on the paper where there's a move by Seplat and ExxonMobil deal that will be able to bring about 1 million barrels per day to add to what Nigeria is already producing as it is now. This is a sector, this is a region that does deserve a ministry to be able to handle affairs. And if you are scrapping it, and then we are having regional development, there's the president has created a ministry of regional development, then it's almost like just being ambiguous in what you're doing. Is almost like you're holding here, you're living here, you're catching this, you're catching that. It feels like there's no direction when it comes to our region, when it comes to what we want to do according to states or our mineral resources, natural resources, and then what we want to do precisely. Livestock is not even a natural resource, it's not a mineral resource. It has not built us, it has not boosted our GDP or our economy in any way. So far, so good. It is there, but its percentage, so far, so good, is, well, I don't want to use the word insignificant, but we are even seeing that side struggling. Apart from poultry and the eggs that we have out there, in fact, it is even a struggling ministry, and also part of our revenue generating businesses in the country that have suffered a lot in the past. We should not see the Niger Delta ministry being scrapped or going away and all of that. I just hope that, well, Clark is saying that it cannot be, it cannot go, and all of that. We are seeing statements that there is a misinformation and all of that. But we need to clearly know precisely what this is all about. Is it being scrapped? Why are you scrapping it and then creating regional and ministries and all of that? It doesn't need to go, because the Niger Delta is a region. It can stay on its own. You don't have to scrap it. You leave it. If you want to create regions for the north, for other part of the countries and all of that, maybe because of the peculiar mineral resource they have and all of that, that is expected. But to scrap out this ministry, I don't think it's one that should go. It's going to mean a lot of problems, just as you rightly said, and I don't want to imagine what would be the outcome at the end of the day.
Honestly, because I think another ministry that I'm rooting for is the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. I truly hope that she does something, because if so much backing is given, if she does her job as she should, we will see that we begin to have more investors coming in, and then, I mean, we'll see that some of our industries that are dead will know and wake up and start working. So let's keep our fingers crossed, hoping things will work out well. Let's take a look at Daily Sun newspaper, where we have PDP asks North Central to produce a nominee for the national chairman. You can find that story on page 27. Tension heightens in cabinet as president sacks Mama, Bio, and 3 others. Appoints Bianca Ojukwu, 6 others as ministers. Give October 30th deadline for implementation of the change. You can start reading that on the front page and then continue on page 6. Tinubu under pressure to retain chief security officer And we have Fasai may remain in office till course resumption time. You can find that story on page 6. Ozodinma NGE president tasked journalists to promote growth in all eastern region. How others are worsening food inflation coming from Bedo. FCCPC boss is complaining. We hope that those who are holding back food should please make it available because people are hungry. Federal government seeks $680 million loan to buy attack jets and ammunition. Troops smash armed groups camps, neutralize costs, rescue 14 in the southeast. You can find out on page 4. We have a picture story where we can see the Registrar of Federal College of Forestry, Ibadan, and we have representative of the Minister of Environment, Dr. Ibrahim. We have the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, Ibadan, Dr. Zakaria, and we have the acting deputy provost, Mrs. Olawoyi, during the 76th and 83rd convention of the college in Ibadan yesterday. That's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, Ododo increases monthly pension of Kogi retirees by 10,000 naira. IMF commends CBN's forex reforms, aggressive interest rate hikes. DICO heads NSC as Tinubu's craft sports ministry. The big story, FEC okays 443.3 million euros, $141 million for 6 M346 fighter aircraft and ammunition, approves establishment of Creative Economy Fund. You can start with the details on the front page. After Obasanjo's Alarm Senate Plan Summit on 20 million out of school children. So after Obasanjo's Alarm Senate Plan Summit on 20 million out of school children. Clark rejects scrapping of Niger Delta Ministry as Tinubu drops Tahir for other ministers. The writer says it's mere change in nomenclature. NDDC remains. A statement from Idris and Momo. Meha heads new livestock ministry. Buhari's ministers Dangyadi Dare return. Imwada replaces Edu as humanitarian affairs. Bianca Ojoko, 5 others in. In Enugu, man dies after father and native doctor not. Troops avert tanker explosion in rivers. We will build more dams to tackle flooding, federal government assures Nigerians. We have a picture story from left. We can see the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, head of Civil Service, Mrs. D.T. Wilson Jack, Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Bajabiamila. We have Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu during the Federal Executive Council meeting at the Presidential Villa. This happened in Abuja yesterday, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. Cautious optimism over Tinubu's reshuffle cabinet changes. We're seeing the picture of some of the people that were being introduced in newly intake ministers. You can find detail of that on page 6. NUC, NCDMB, others move to commercialize research and capital flight. Food displays 5 million Nigerians in 10 years. Detail found on page 8. IMF taxed Nigeria and other African governments on fiscal reforms and e-governance. We have diphtheria killed 1,191 persons in 17 months, says NCDC. MBS says 85.2% of households use estimated billing. More detail of that found on page 3. And we have federal government receives 350,000 applications, disburses 10 million naira in student loan. Detail of that can be found on page 2, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Tinubu fires 5 ministers in major cabinet reshuffle. Ohane Mamantri orders out, Bianca Ojukwu, Yuwada, 5 others nominated. Trial of Binance chief for money laundering terminated. Attorney General in trouble over state suit against EFCC. FEC OK's 443 million euros, $142 million for fighter jets and ammunitions. NIBSS plans BVN platform for Nigerians in diaspora by December. On the 2024 stories you can find on page 5, how federal government tax reforms can gain support by IMF. FCCPC boss blames food inflation on hoarders. You can find details on page 4. But can hoarders really be the reason behind food inflation in the country? How many people are hoarding that it will be that massive that we have inflation going that high? I just hope that we really look into the issues in this country and fix them. Nigeria taking steps to strengthen Naira, says Edom. Avoid flooding, relocate from Onya Dam part, Ogun urges residents, but we are also seeing resistance from the people in this very community. You can find details on page 6, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Independent. Benue governor suspend AG over still challenging EFCC legality. You can read detail in the paper. IMF charges African leaders on addressing rising high indebtedness. We have mixed review trails Tinubu's major cabinet reshuffle and others. President fires 5 ministers, names 7 new ones, reassign 10 so that they can actually give their best in the new ministry they have been relocated to. We have abolishes Niger Delta Affairs Sports Development Ministries. Wants appointees to set Nigeria on path to irreversible growth. There was no basic for scrapping Niger Delta Ministry, says Clark. Former Minister Dalong opposes scrapping of Sport Ministry because he was one time the Minister of Sport. Obani shall react over ministry overseeing development commissions. You can find all these on page 29. FEC OK 740 billion naira for beggar stretch of Abuja Kanu Road. Senate calls for national summit on the out-of-school children. We are seeing that follow after the report coming from Obasanjo. Afrexim Bank commits $200 million as federal government UK's Creative Economic Development Fund. Troops smash armed groups, calm, kill, scores, rescue 14 in the southeast. And we have the Federal Competition and Consumers Protection Commission blames grain hoarders for the rising food inflation in Nigeria, which they are looking into it. And we have PTDF to print 1 million science textbooks for secondary school students. You can find that on page 7. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper. But then, before we move further with other paper review, we'd love to take a break. Quite a lot. What do you feel about the reshuffling, as well as the sacking of some of the ministers? And then we have new about 7 ministers that have been, reappointed. So we would love to hear your own views concerning that. And when we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. It's still the dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the front page of the paper. We would love to hear your own views, especially regarding the story that is making on, the rounds on most of the paper regarding the reshuffling, the sacking, and also scrapping of the Ministry of Sport, as well as that of the Niger Delta, where we are having Clark, frowning against that decision, which the federal government is defending itself, saying that that ministry has not been scrapped, but then the name has just been changed. So we hope that more details concerning that will be made available. So please do go through all the stories on the paper and drop your own views regarding that. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Celia.
All right, let's continue the paper review, looking at the New Telegraph newspaper.
The first story on the paper is on PMS. Importation drops by 33% to 106 billion naira. Palm price to rise by extra 59 naira 63 kobo. Let's start with the details on the front page. Why Nigeria others must embrace fiscal reforms by IMF. Senate to Navy pay salaries allowances of dismissed officers. Federal government drops money laundering charge against Binance executive Gambaryan. You can find details on page 4. Lagos could face submersion due to climate change. Statement from the deputy governor, and I hope that they start doing something to make sure that Lagos doesn't submerge. Canadian lady backs 11 years imprisonment for importing illicit drug into Nigeria. The big story on the paper, speculations over as Tinubu sacks Uju Kennedy, Tahir, 3 other ministers in cabinet reject. You can find details on page 4, 6, and 31. PDP postpones NEC meeting to stop Aiyedatiwa as Governor Mohammed says he didn't take party to court. While Obasanjo Danjuma want paradigm shift in political leadership. Ganduje's alleged bribery case court to hear pending applications November 20th. Still on the paper, FEC OK's 443.3 million euros, $141 million facility from financiers to procure fighter jets and ammunition. Unclaimed baggage at MMA2 destroyed, given to charity after 6 months, says COO. Diphtheria killed 1,191 in 17 months, says the NCDC. You can find details on page 28, and that's all the news on New Telegraph.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Aviation Ministry, NITMED DG and others participate in WMO Neuronautical Meteorological Scientific Conference, detail found in the paper. Court orders release of Gambaya from prison as federal government drops criminal charge. Federal government urges states to boost climate change resilience. CBN FX backlog clearance boosts Naira stability, coming from IMF. The big story making rounds on most paper, Tinubu sacked 5 ministers, reassigned 10 to new portfolio. Charges newly appointed ministers reassign colleagues to see their appointment as called to serve Nigeria. President has no basis to scrap Niger Delta Affair Ministry, coming from Edwin Clark. Still on the paper, we have ASUP mobilizes lecturers as strike ultimatum expires. As more lecturers endorse ASUP National Executive Council position, you can read that in the paper. Ogun tell residents of flood-prone areas to relocate. You can find that on page 8, and that's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the first newspaper, Nigeria's education crisis is the big story. 20 million out-of-school children, potential bandits. Akpabio sounds alarm. Said it calls for national summit to address crisis, urges state governors to act before time bomb explodes. Mahi gives Julius Berger 7 days ultimatum to accept Abuja Kano road contract. Edwin Clark kicks against Tinubu's scrapping of Niger Delta Ministry, vows resistance. Canadian woman jailed 11 years for importing 35.2 kg cannabis into Nigeria. Cabinet reshuffle, Tinubu fires 5 ministers, nominates 7 others. 15 states announce new minimum wage, Imo 20 others yet to follow. Father native doctor arrested after son dies in ritual fortification. Federal government drops money laundering charges against Binance executive. We still have the story where Governor Dibi was honored with First News Award for Excellence. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, court sentences Canadian lady to 11 years imprisonment for importing illicit drug into Nigeria. We've seen that on most paper. Ex-commissioner hits back at Adeleke, yes, the government to provide technical report concerning the Olayi flyover. Deteriorating health condition halt EFCC persecution of Binance executive. FEC approves creation of Creative Economic Fund to unveil IP policy. And we have the big story here being titled as Explosive Reshuffle. Tinubu appoints 7 new ministers, dismisses Mamman, Oyaniyi, and others. Where we have FEC scrap Niger Delta Sport Ministry establishes regional development. No basic for scrubbing. We've seen that Clark rejecting that. As well, we have the picture story, a picture rather of some of the ministers. We have Lagos to host 9-day Afropolis International Cultural Festival. You can read that on page 13. Withdraw threat against Abuja beggars or face legal action. Serap tells Wike, we will recall Wike gave an ultimatum for beggars to leave FCT. So here Serap is actually telling him to withdraw that threat or he will face a legal action. You can read that on page 13. And that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Matrix newspaper, the first story is on frequent national grid collapse. Reps launch probe as NERC public hearing holds today. Diko in as National Sports Commission chairman as federal government dissolves sports ministry. NNPC to clear $6 billion petrol supply debt soon. An assurance from Edun explains re-emergence of fuel subsidy, says it's caused by FX fluctuations. Senate calls for national summit over menace of 20 million out-of-school children. Benue Governor Aya suspends Attorney General for challenging AFCC legality. The big story, Tinubu shakes up cabinet, fires 5 ministers, redeploys 10, makes 7 fresh nominations. Ministry of Regional Development to oversee activities of all regional development commissions. Charges new appointees to understand administration's eagerness, determination to set Nigeria on path to irreversible growth. Surprises as Adelabu Matawale and Yetola others escape Tinubu's hammer. Mr. Wike must withdraw threat to arrest beggars, Serap is demanding. Tinubu swears in Abdullahi Usman Bello as new CCB chairman. Bob Risky falls ill in police custody, rushed to hospital. You can find details of that story on page 3. We still have an entertainment story. Ira Star opens up on challenges of fame, artistic journey. If you want to read that story, you can find details on page 21. Still picture story showing in and out ministers, Hurricane Tinubu rocks cabinet. That is the caption. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Business Day newspaper, which let's see what that paper have for us, where we have Tinubu appoints 7 new ministers, reassign 10, sack 5. Ojukwu Oduwole makes the list. Ministry of Regional Development, National Sport Commission emerges as new ministries. Infrastructure costs cut off 120 million Nigerians from internet. Nigerians' 51% debt to GDP ratio seen falling in 2025. Pension growth hinges on informal sector state compliances, dated on page 30, and that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, the big story, Eno out. Mixed reactions trail Diko's appointment as NSC boss, and we have former sports minister Eno gets new role. You can find details on page 7. Wafu B, Nigeria go for broke versus Ivory Coast today. Zhejiang officially welcomed Kalu to China. You can find details on page 6. CAF retains rules after Libya versus Nigeria face off. Vinicius Jr. will win Ballon d'Or. An assurance from Ancelotti. You can find why he's sure on page 3. Haaland with hat-trick as citizens rode the Reds. Under 17 WWC, USA coach seeks perfection ahead of Nigeria clash. Odegaard out of Liverpool showdown. Chelsea will be crazy not to sign Osimhen. You might want to find details of who is making this statement on page 6. Rodrigo Courtois out of El Clasico, that is Barcelona against Real Madrid. Mourinho hopes City gets stripped of EPL titles. I believe that is concerning the charges against Man City. And then we have Pogba confirmed City talks. Chelsea wants theirs to pair Palmer. You can find details on page 4. And that's all the news on Point Sports Extra.
Well, let's take a look at another paper, which is The Voice of Liberty, where we have Obasanjo Danjuma demand pentagram shift in Nigerians' political leadership. Alleged bribery and misappropriation, Kanu court adjourns Ganduje's case till November 20. Concerning Abuja Kaduna Kanu Road project, accepts 740 billion naira or forget it, Umahi to Julius Becker. Where we have Tinubu finally reshuffles cabinet, sacks some ministers, scrapped 2 ministries. House of Reps to consider bill advocating 50% derivation fund. Withdraw beggars arrest, threats or face lawsuit, Sarah wants Wike. World Bank blames Nigerians' food crisis to Tinubu's Naira policy and insecurity. So you wonder why he doesn't listen to the World Bank, but rather listen to the IMF. You can read detail of that. Buy petrol at 1,000 naira per litre or CNG for 200 naira per meter. Tinubu tell Nigerians. So you can read that in the paper, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On leadership, FCCPC blames hoarders for food inflation and scarcity. Federal government drops charges against Binance executive. 100 empowered as leadership. Nasarawa skill training ends in Abuja. General Danjuma meets Northern Democrats over bad governance. Cabinet reshuffle is the big story. At last, Tinubu wields the big stick, sacks 5 ministers. Kennedy Ohane, Mama Adejon, Gwezo, Bio Ibrahim out. Bianca Ojukwu, 6 others nominated to face Senate screening. Nigel Delta and Sports Ministry scrapped. Gunmen killed 4 policemen in Katsina. Mugalu emerges president of African School of Governance. Naira now 1,725 to a dollar. That is on the parallel market, and then on the official market we have it at 1,653 naira. And as out of the start of the week, it was at 1,641 on the official market. So we can say that both on the parallel and the official market, the Naira is dropping its value as against the dollar. Senate calls for summit over out of school children. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
The same newspaper, Kadusu Eduwo, foreign investors says confidence restore in Nigerian's economy. CBN governor reveals NIBSS to launch BVN platform for diasporas by December. 2024 budget performance put at 12.6 trillion naira. Federal government okayed 750 billion naira for Abuja Kanu Road project. As well, we still have Tinubu discharges Adejon and others during his cabinet shake-off. We can see the new ministerial nominees and their portfolios, so you can look into that in the paper. The curious case of Ondo, Imo, and Abia, you can read that on page 28. Mo Ibrahim report rank Nigerians among 11 worst ruled African nations in 10 years. You can read that on page 9, and that's all on this day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the GOAT debate, Vinicius Jr. picks Messi ahead of CR7. You can find details at the back page. Tinubu scraps Ministry of Sports Development. Ronaldo injects further 5 million euros into Valladolid. You can find details at the back page. Xavi requests 100 million euros Rafinha to replace Ten Hag. The big story of Shime gives Gala go-ahead to open talks for permanent transfer as Turkish team search for 75 million from sponsors to keep him. Boniface to return against Werder Bremen. This is Alonso saying. You can find details on page 6. Odegaard upbeat on fitness recovery at Arsenal. Maradona Jr. named new coach of Spanish club. We have the Major League Soccer ahead of SPL in battle for De Bruyne. You can find details inside the paper. And we have Fonseca Chukwueze gave Milan more energy against Club Brugge. £80 million prize tag placed on Pedro and Porro. You can find details inside the paper. LeBron James' son make historic NBA appearance. NFF to get $400,000, CAF lodges in President Gusau to get $50,000 yearly. Simeon eyeing Atletico Madrid exit, Rodrigo to miss El Clasico due to tie problem, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun.
Well, and that's how far we can get today on the program, The Dailies. Thank you so much for keeping a date with us. We hope you keep a date again tomorrow as we do this as usual. To have a lovely day ahead.